The story begins over 4,000 years ago. In the ancient and wealthy city of U, the people of this land were lost in deep spiritual darkness. They bowed their heads to silent statues of stone and wood. But one young boy completely refused to bow. His name was Ibrahim. Even as a child, he searched for the ultimate truth. He watched the shining stars at night. But when the morning came, the stars faded away. He knew a true God does not disappear. He watched the glowing moon light up the dark sky. But the moon also vanished by dawn. He watched the blazing sun set in the evening. Ibrahim realized the true creator of the universe never fades and never sets. As he grew into a man, his belief in one God grew stronger. His own father carved these lifeless idols for a living. Ibrahim asked him, "Why do you worship what you create with your own hands?" But the people were blind and deaf to his logic. The ultimate ruler of this land was a terrifying tyrant. His name was King Namrud. Namrud was so arrogant that he claimed to be a living god. He believed he had the power of life and death over everyone. But Ibrahim feared no earthly king. One day, the entire city left for a grand outdoor festival. The great temple of the idols was left completely empty. Ibrahim walked into the silent hall of false gods. He carried a heavy metal axe in his hand. With powerful strikes, he smashed every single idol into pieces. He spared only the largest statue standing in the center. He took his heavy axe and hung it around the neck of this biggest idol. When the people returned from the festival, they screamed in absolute horror. Their sacred temple was just a pile of broken stones. They violently dragged Ibrahim into the royal court of King Namrud. They demanded to know if he destroyed their mighty gods. Ibrahim smiled calmly and pointed to the biggest statue. He said, "Ask the big one, he is the one holding the axe." The angry priests shouted, "You know these statues cannot speak or move." Ibrahim replied loudly, "Then why do you worship things that cannot even protect themselves?" The logic was flawless, but their pride was deeply wounded. King Namrud was humiliated in front of his entire kingdom. His anger was absolutely terrifying. He ordered the worst punishment imaginable for Ibrahim. "Burn him alive," the wicked king commanded. For several days, the entire city gathered massive piles of wood. They dug a giant pit deep into the earth. They lit a fire so gigantic that no human could even stand near it. The roaring flames leaped high into the dark sky. The heat was so intense that birds flying far above dropped dead. The fire was so huge they had to build a giant catapult just to throw him in. As Ibrahim flew through the air towards the roaring flames, he did not panic. He closed his eyes and trusted his creator entirely. The angel Gabriel suddenly appeared in the sky and asked if he needed help. Ibrahim replied, "Allah is entirely sufficient for me, and he is the best protector." Then the divine command echoed through the universe. Allah commanded, "O fire, be coolness and absolute safety for Ibrahim." The raging inferno instantly transformed by the will of God. The blazing hot coals felt like a cool, peaceful garden. The heavy ropes binding his hands burned away, but his skin remained perfectly untouched. The massive crowd watched the flames in absolute, stunned silence. When the fire finally died down hours later, Ibrahim walked out calmly. Not a single thread of his clothing was burned or blackened. King Namrud sat completely paralyzed on his royal throne. He had massive armies and endless wealth, but he had lost. The truth of one God had triumphed over the fire of the tyrant. After the incredible miracle of the fire, the tyrant king and his people still refused to believe. Ibrahim realized his mission in the city of U was completely over. He made the deeply painful decision to leave his homeland forever. He even had to leave his own father behind, who chose to stay with the idols. He began his great migration entirely for the sake of Allah. Only his beloved wife, Sarah, and his righteous nephew, Lut, chose to travel with him. They crossed harsh, burning deserts, heading towards the blessed lands of Syria and Palestine. In every town they passed, they invited people to worship the one true Creator. Years passed, and a severe, deadly famine struck the land where they lived. To find food and survive, Ibrahim and Sarah had to travel far south into Egypt. At that time in history, Egypt was ruled by a very cruel and arrogant king. This king had a terrible reputation for stealing beautiful women away from their families. Sarah was known to be one of the most beautiful women of her time. When they entered the Egyptian borders, the king's spies immediately noticed her. The tyrant king ordered his royal guards to bring Sarah directly to his palace. Ibrahim felt completely helpless, but he immediately stood in deep prayer to Allah. Inside the palace, when the evil king reached out his hand to grab Sarah, a miracle occurred. His arm suddenly became completely paralyzed, frozen in midair. He fell to the ground, choking and gasping for breath, terrified by the unseen power. He desperately begged Sarah to pray to her God to release him. She prayed for him, and his body was instantly restored to normal. But the wicked king broke his promise and tried to grab her a second time. Once again, he was violently paralyzed, struck down by divine protection. Trembling with absolute fear, the king finally realized he could not defeat her God. He ordered his guards to take her away and let her return to Ibrahim safely. To show his immense fear and respect, the king offered her many valuable gifts. The greatest of these gifts was a noble, righteous woman named Hajra. Hajra joined their family not just as a helper but as a deeply respected companion. Ibrahim, Sarah, and Hajra safely left Egypt under the strict protection of Allah. They traveled back to the Holy Lands, ready for the next chapter of their divine journey. Decades passed as Ibrahim and his beloved wife, Sarah, grew much older. They had dedicated their entire lives to spreading the message of one true God. But there was a quiet, lingering sadness in their peaceful home. Despite their constant prayers, they had never been blessed with a child. Ibrahim was now an old man, with silver hair and a lifetime of struggles. Sarah knew exactly how deeply her husband desired a son to carry on his divine mission. In an act of supreme selflessness and sacrifice, she made a deeply difficult choice. She offered her noble and righteous companion, Hajra, to become his second wife. Ibrahim accepted, and soon, Allah answered his lifelong prayers. Hajra gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. They named him Ismail. This was the very first child of Ibrahim, born when he was 86 years old. His home was finally filled with the beautiful, joyful sounds of a child. But the extraordinary miracles of Allah were far from over. About 13 years later, a group of mysterious strangers arrived at the tent of Ibrahim. They were not ordinary travelers, but powerful angels sent directly from the heavens. They brought incredible news that completely defied all human logic and science. They told Ibrahim that his first wife, Sarah, would also give birth to a son. Sarah, who was listening nearby, struck her face and laughed in absolute astonishment. She said, "How can a very old, barren woman and an elderly man possibly have a child?" The angels gently replied, "Do you doubt the incredible power and decree of Allah?" They reminded her that when the Creator commands a thing to be, it simply is. Just as the divine messengers promised, a second incredible miracle took breath. Sarah gave birth to a radiant baby boy, and they named him Ishaq. Ibrahim now held two mighty sons in his arms, Ismail and Ishaq. Both of these chosen boys would grow up to become great prophets of Allah. From the lineage of Ishaq, countless Israelite prophets would emerge. And from the lineage of Ismail, many generations later, the final prophet of mankind would be born. The young boy who was once thrown entirely alone into a roaring fire was now the blessed father of nations.